They got me feeling like I'm academics. Can't.
Oh yeah. We could get a Durk conversation going on. All right, great news for Durk, man. This was a really great news in anticipation of, if you don't know, his trial is starting in a month. So Durk's trial for murder for hire is starting in a month. If you don't know the whole story, he's accused of orchestrating and paying for the murder of Lil Pop. It was supposed to be Quando Rondo, but Quando Rondo luckily escaped death, and his cousin got killed. Now, the people who are accused of carrying out the murder, they were charged alongside Lil Durk in a sweeping indictment that accused them of a murder for hire plot. What's happened since Durk has been locked up is like a lot of things in terms of even the case changing. Now, recently, the prosecutors wanted to include under a violent crime in aid of a racketeering enterprise, they wanted to involve other crimes. So it's like a version of the RICO that you could bring in other criminal activity. And they were trying to bring in the activity of Lil Durk supposedly shooting somebody in Atlanta, and also Lil Durk allegedly paying for the murder of another man named Stephon Mack in Chicago. That guy, Stephon Mack, was linked to his brother's death, which his brother name is D-Thing. The win that he got in court is that the judge actually agreed with Drew Finland and Brian Steele that it severely prejudices Durk's chance of not only, number one, getting a speedy trial, but number two, of defending himself when the government at the last minute just throws a bunch of new charges into the mix, hoping they could get a conviction. So the judge says, hey, listen, you guys can file your charges. We're just severing these charges, and we're severing it from the current case. The current case he's slated to go defend is going to be defended on, again, August 20th. And by the way, they're at the point they're starting to get jury and other stuff prepared. They're saying you can't try to backdoor Durk with last minute charges because it's going to push the case back. He wants a speedy trial. I'm going to play you the press conference in a while. But I do want to read you the order by the judge. The judge did put an order, and this is what the order said. So the order is the motion to grant defendant Durk Banks' motion to sever the counts, denying defendants Wilson and this is another motion. They keep putting in motions to sever the defendants, so they don't want to they don't want to go to trial with Durk, which actually helps them or helps Durk too, because remember, if it's murder for hire, number one, they're accusing all of y'all in being a conspiracy. If they separate the charges, it is more likely that you could defend yourself by saying, I wasn't with this guy, or that's not what happened. Because remember, now the conspiracy has the defendants with different cases. There's a lot more play you could do. And when I mean play, there's a lot more angles and wiggle room you could have when you're not charged with your co-defendants or you're not going to trial with your co-defendants in a conspiracy case. Anyway, let's just read the motion. Before the court, the following motions. The defendant Banks filed a motion to sever counts in the alternative to dismiss the motion to sever counts on July 29th. We don't have to read the other motions because those motions are denied, and those are to sever the trials. So this is what the judge says. The judge says the motion to sever the counts is granted. Count 1 and 6 are severed from counts 2, 3, 4, and 5 in the superseding indictment, the TSI. And the third superseding indictment, trial on 2, 3, 4, and 5 will proceed at this time, August 20th. Now, this is the interesting part. It doesn't mean because the charges are severed from this current trial means Durk doesn't have to answer to them. Now, maybe they could get dismissed, but Durk will deal with that at a different time. And also, if that's the only thing he has to deal with, he has a favorable chance as well. So anyway, so count 1 and 6 are severed, right? So 1 and 6, he's going to have to answer to a different time. It says the court exercises its undoubted discretion for the reasons argued in the motion to sever counts and discussed at the hearing. In particular, the clarity of issues for the jurors in the Los Angeles trial outweighs the inconvenience to the second set of jurors in the Vicker trial. It has been and remains the court's intention that the Los Angeles trial will include all admissible evidence that is not unduly prejudicial under Rule 403. Therefore, the government cannot be prejudiced by this severance. The government chose to withdraw evidence from the Chicago incident in the Los Angeles trial for the reason expressed in the prior order denying severance. The renewed motion. Okay, we don't have to read this. Okay. Bet. Now, the trial is going to happen. Here is a press conference that Drew Finland did. And this is him talking about the win they had in court.
Okay, so look, we're going to be very, very brief because as our incredible colleague Christy O'Connor said, there's not a lot to actually say given the thoroughness of his Honor's analysis of everything that was filed. So the docket really speaks for itself. There was incredible filings and briefings done, and such a great job by Ms. O'Connor. And so we appreciate the fact that his Honor, is one of those days that makes it so rewarding to be a trial attorney when a judge takes everything that was submitted and goes through it so thoroughly and in such great detail. And so I'll ask you that was in the courtroom and that have read the filings to rely on his Honor's questions today and the points that he made. And as you, but most importantly, as our innocent client, Durk Banks, and I emphasize our innocent client, Durk Banks, is waiting. We are looking forward to the close of business today when we get this order so that we can see if we can be at this courthouse on August 20th of 2026 for the trial that we've been working on and preparing for 22 months. So we appreciate you all being here today, but we're super excited for his Honor's order to come out today, and we so appreciate the thoroughness that took place in that courtroom today. So with that being said, we're not going to do any questions. We appreciate everybody that was here today. Thank you.
Okay, Brian Steele smiling. Apparently, Traplo Ross was there. He was there at the courthouse, and we'll tune into my boy Traplo Ross.
Growing up.
For the update that he witnessed in court. He said, I just saw Lil Durk win in court. Let's see what he saw.
All right, so I'm here at the federal courthouse in downtown.
Yo, Trap Lore, them glasses are crazy. These glasses is crazy, gang. My nigga got the joints that is shades when you flip him down, and they're like see-through when you flip him up. Holy.
LA, I just attended the Lil Durk trial for the first day. Now, I'm not even allowed my proper camera, anywhere near the building, so I'm just filming this quick intro, but I'm going to go and sit down and write down, let you guys know all of my notes, but I'm literally here at the courthouse. Brian Steele and Drew Findling are about to come out and speak to the press. I'm hopefully going to be able to film what they had to say to people, and then I've got a massive, massive amount of notes, and I'm not going to lie to you, this might have been the best court date that Durk has had so far. I might have been wrong, because he just took an insane W in court. I could not believe it. There were moments where, like, the whole courthouse was just aghast with how good this was going for Durk. It was actually unbelievable. It was a huge W, and I think the judge is going to make a big ruling in Durk's favor after this. I'm in shock. So there's a lot going on. There's like construction going on. The audio is probably terrible. I don't have my microphone. The federal courthouse is a lot more.
Here we go.
Inside the court next time, because we just between Young Boy and Durk and how that all spiraled out of control with what happened with Quando Rondo and King Von and Lil Pab. So yeah, I will keep you guys posted anytime I hear anything new, any updates.
What went down, and it was, I'm not going to lie, it was a bloodbath for the prosecution. They got absolutely smoked.
Now, here's the thing. We're talking about the best lawyers in the land. Drew Finland is known as the billion-dollar attorney. He's rumored to charge in excess of $3,000 an hour. Whether he's picking up the phone, and you know, goddamn it, if he got to go to trial, you at least guaranteeing him $1 million or $2 million. They brought on Brian Steele. That got Young Thug out of jail. Lil Durk is paying the cost for the best legal representation money could buy. And it's days like this. And if you don't know, you know, they talk about the feds this and third. Usually, the lawyer you get, the prosecutor might be a better lawyer than the lawyer you get. When you're paying $4,000 an hour for an attorney, that lawyer is head and shoulders above all of them prosecutors. That's the reason why they're in the private practice making that bread. If the prosecutors could make that bread, they'd do it too, right? Remember, that's a government appointed position. And by the way, this is Fed, so this is AUSAs. Now, we were waiting. Okay, he's paying the fees. When are these lawyers going to come through? You know, obviously, Diddy paid the money too. But Diddy had a favorable result. He only got 3 years. It looks like it's dwindling down, like he's going to be out. Some people are saying maybe end of 2027. But we're now realizing that Durk, having these great lawyers, he's finally scoring, let's say, a small victory. You can't really celebrate too crazy because he still could get convicted. But to sever this charge is a big thing.
Is crazy. Now, before we get any further, I just want to make it very clear. Everybody's saying, oh, Ross, you're changing your tune. You're always saying Durk's cooked. This doesn't uncook Durk. All this means is that he is currently having a W. If they separate the two murder charges into separate trials, that will help him massively. That will help him massively. It's still going to be tough. They're still allegedly got snitches that are on both cases that are telling on Durk, and it is very bad.
I don't know how they're going to remedy the snitches, but I think Brian Steele, I think he gets brought in to deal with that. I do think he's going to play the same role, or a kind of same role that he did with Diddy's trial. He's an attack dog. We seen him in court for Young Thug. You bring him in to dismantle a witness. When they're done with those snitches on there, them snitches might just like end up just snitching on themselves and get the fuck off that stage or off the stand. But I think they brought him in for the snitching, for some of the snitches. Drew Finland, who's still a boss, he's going to run the whole show. He's going to be the Mark Agnifilo. So they're kind of creating this team. I wouldn't even be surprised if Durk doesn't add another lawyer before August 20th. Okay? Now, just like in the Diddy case, Diddy added some lawyers last minute. They told Diddy, we're not extending the trial. But clearly here, Lil Durk says he wants a speedy trial. So even if he adds another lawyer, he's going to have to still stick with this date.
But it does mean that he is going to avoid any prejudice of the jury, knowing that he's got bodies on bodies on bodies. It's going to be one body at a time, LA body, Chicago body, separate trials.
Okay, I'm glad that he just said that. Because what's going to happen as well is that because the counts has been severed, they're not going to be allowed to mention this. They're not going to be able to. They're not going to be allowed to mention the allegations of the Chicago murder for hire. Keep in mind, as a juror, if you hear one allegation of someone doing something, you're like, maybe they didn't do it. If you hear 5 allegations, like, oh no, that's their MO. You might be like, oh man, this guy, he probably is, like, even if he ain't do this one, he probably did one of the other 4.
Less racketeering, gang conspiracy, and the judge hasn't ruled on it yet. I expect the judge is going to make the ruling later today that they are going to allow the charges to be severed. And, you know, look, it doesn't uncook Durk, but it also gives him a really great step forward so that he can then have some W's and some improvements. So just to give you a little bit of backstory, okay, so Durk's legal team basically filed paperwork. I'm not going to sit here and read you all the paperwork like I have done in the past, okay, but basically, they asked the court either separate the newly added charges from the case or dismiss them entirely. They argued the government caused the delays. And some of the stuff in this filing was a little bit ridiculous. You know, they said that basically, when the government clapped back, they kind of said, look, we don't want Durk to basically be able to cherry pick what charges he fancies facing. Well, that's not what the judge was trying to hear today. The judge was saying it's not about Durk cherry picking what charges he wants to face. It's really about not adding a bunch of stuff last minute that is going to be prejudicial and make the jury have shitloads more to get through, rather than two separate juries. So this is the actual paperwork. This was Durk's response basically to, you know, the previous edition of charges. I'm not going to read you the whole thing, but basically they're saying that they've endangered his...
Now, I'm going to be honest with you. I've seen some people saying what they feel Durk is going to get. They're like, he's going to get a minimum of 15 years. I just seen DeVore on Kick say that, keep in mind, if he's found guilty of murder for hire, it's automatically life in prison. Like, the stakes are high here. They don't play around when it comes to these conspiracy murder charges. There's no like, oh, give him 5 years. You know, it's either life or not, right? We've heard nothing about a plea. I don't think this is going to be a situation where they're going to offer him a lengthy plea, nor I think they will, nor I think he would take that anyway. I think he's either going to beat it or he's going to get convicted.
Speedy trial rights. They've added all these new charges last minute. You know, they should have been available a long time ago. They're doing all of this right up close to his August 20th trial date. And basically they're saying that, you know, this has endangered the trial date. They're not allowing him his opportunity to get a speedy trial. They're adding all this stuff really close to the deadlines. But when the prosecution clapped back in this paperwork, they basically said we were trying to correct any factual assertions, basically correcting things that they said that Durk's reply was not giving a full explanation, okay? And this is the same stuff that ended up getting brought up in court. They basically said, you know, they got co-conspirator 4's iCloud on June the 8th. You know, they got some more information. They got more details. People were examining the iCloud, basically saying that we got a bunch of new information and we had to add these new charges. We did them as soon as we could. And as I covered in a previous video, they basically gave the information as quickly as they could. And it's kind of like, you know, the prosecution,
a little bit.
He got more up aura than all the rappers.
Yeah, because I want him to give his eyewitness test or eyewitness details of what he saw in court. How does Durk look? What's his body language? That's what I want to hear from Trap Lord, because we read that document already.
It was looking like it had $1 billion budget. I'm not saying that the courthouse
Here we go.
was covered today. I'm just going to break this down for you guys. I'm not going to react to anything else in this video. I'm just going to not read from my notebook, but I'm going to kind of like go from my notes and basically just give you the backstory of everything that was covered today in great detail. I was writing as fast as my fingers possibly could. It was crazy. So I'm going to tell you the whole story of everything that went down. So I pulled up to the federal courthouse. Now, this courthouse was looking like it had $1 billion budget. I'm not saying that the courthouse for the state or for the city of Los Angeles is run down, but having attended the David trial, that courthouse ain't as ballin' as this courthouse. This courthouse was looking like a brand new built airport or an embassy. It reminded me of the American Embassy in London, the new American Embassy in Battersea in London. It just looks absolutely magnificent, beautiful glass, beautiful structure. You could tell even just walking into the building, the Fed's got that real big budget money. Unlike the state of California, unlike the city, that courthouse is cool, it's nice, but it's like this courthouse was like something futuristic and high tech. I went there really early because I thought tons of people would be there. There was no one there, not a soul. I was the first person in there. I was in there for an hour by myself, just sending voice notes and just completely empty. I was thinking, did I get the date wrong? Am I in the wrong place? But I was in the right place. This is exactly where it was going down. So I waited around. I spoke to a few other journalists that eventually came through after I'd been sat there for quite a long time. And it was very, very interesting. So I was there waiting for people to come. I start seeing people turn up, a few people I recognized. And then Brian Steele and Drew Findling pulled up. And I got to say, they were looking like celebrities. It was big aura. Brian Steele's aura is off the charts. I can't lie to you. When Brian Steele popped out, it was like he genuinely had the most... I don't know if I've ever seen... He got more up aura than all the rappers. This guy was looking like money. He was looking confident. He was looking successful. He was well kept. Drew Findling, on the other hand, Drew Findling got aura, but he kind of a little bit disheveled on the mad genius kind of vibe. Brian Steele looking more clean cut, like...
Nah, usually Drew Findling is the more clean. Like, even his suit gives $1 billion lawyer.
Absolutely sharp as hell. Absolutely sharp as hell. And when they walked in, okay, it was just like, it was like a movie. Brian Steele, Drew Findling walk in with their whole crew. it was like everyone turned and looked at them. It was straight aura farming, to be honest with you. They were looking absolutely incredible. They were looking sharp, and you could really see why, you know, these are such a crack team, such a dream team of lawyers, okay? And I'll be honest with you guys, you know, having actually seen this sort of in real life, seeing how this plays out, I've got a lot more confidence in Durk now. This is really a good team. Now, they're definitely going to bleed him dry. I don't think that aura comes cheap, and I'm sure it's costing an absolute fortune, but they turned up and did the business. It was insane. So from there, okay, I had a little conversation even with Lil Durk. He's got like a publicist kind of person that was there. She was actually very nice to me, in spite of the negative coverage that I've done.
That's Holly Beard. Diddy hired her too. See, you got to assemble a team. Holly Beard, really good publicist. She's gonna make sure that the government don't feed shit to TMZ that makes him look super cooked before they pick the jury.
On Durk, and you know, she was just kind of like, "You doing what you got to do, you know, you got to talk about this. I'm glad you're here talking about this." I don't know if she knew that it was going to go well that day, but it was almost like, yeah, you know, let's see what you got to say about this one. And it was very, very impressive. Honestly, it was a really, really great show. So not show, but like the show that his defense put on was brilliant. And the judge really was. I'll talk about the judge in a minute, okay? So we walk into the courtroom. It finally opens up, all right? We went and sat down, and Durk was talking with Drew. He was talking with Brian. Durk had a huge grin on his face. I've talked before about David. He looks a bit down sometimes. He looks a little bit up other times, kind of smiling. Durk was straight cheesing, smiling, Durk was the absolute epitome of confidence in that courtroom. He was smiling. He was cheesing. He was laughing. He did not look like a man that was facing two bodies. That's just my honest take. People saying I'm biased. Durk looked so confident. I was stunned. I was stunned at the confidence that Durk was showing. He looked calm. He looked happy. He was really cheesing. I don't know if he got like a diamond in one of his teeth or something, but like, I swear there was a twinkle. Pause. I think like a twit. Like Durk was just looking confident like money. So Durk, Brian, and Drew all together laughing. You look at them thinking, oh, these guys actually, like, these guys is trial ready. Like, these are serious. Seeing that in person definitely changed my perspective a little bit. I'll just be completely honest, okay? I'm not somebody that, oh, I've got an anti-Durk vendetta. I've seen it with my own eyes, and he's looking way more confident than I was expecting. Converse that with David. David looking burnt out. He putting on a little bit of a show. Durk looked genuinely like he knew what he was doing. Durk looked so confident. I could not believe it, okay? They were laughing and joking loads before the trial. Durk and Brian Steele and Drew Finn and Lay really cracking up. Like, they laughing. I couldn't hear what they were saying, but they having a little conference. They whispering. Durk really smiling. I couldn't believe it. Couldn't believe the confidence that Durk had. I could not believe it. I've never seen Durk perform, all right? Hopefully, you know, I mean, I don't even know, but like, to see Durk in the flesh in person after all of the content that I've done over him, about him over the years, was surreal, to be completely honest with you. So everyone was in awe of Brian Steele. He had straight aura when he came in. Everyone was excited. Even in the courtroom, it almost felt like even the prosecution, it's like Brian Steele walks in, it's like, oh, hot damn. It was like the oxygen just got sucked out of the room, like, Brian Steele's here. It was actually crazy. This man has, I'm telling you, Brian Steele has aura on another level. It was insane. So I did notice, okay, Durk's co-defendants, particularly Dee, you know, they were all kind of sat behind him. Him and his other co-defendants were all there. So just to like refresh your memory, right? The people that I saw that were there, we basically saw, you know, still included in this stage, DeAndre, Dontel Wilson, David, Brian, Lindsay, and Asa Houston. So they were all there sat.
By the way, we haven't heard nothing from Vonnie
behind Durk. Now, obviously, there were 5 people on this case originally, and some of those people didn't see no Vonnie, all right? Saw Dee, David, Brian, Lindsay. So Dee, Brown Eyes, Boogie, didn't see no Flacker, didn't see no Dee, okay? Didn't see them. Didn't see them. They weren't there, all right? But that's who was there, and I'll keep it real with you. I'll be honest with you. Okay, no, I'll get to that in a minute. Okay, let me keep talking about Durk, because Durk was looking sharp. Not only was he looking happy, he was looking comfortable. He had very kind of short, cropped hair. He looked sharp. He looked fresh. He honestly looked like music video shoot ready. He didn't look disheveled like David has some of these days. He looked really sharp. He looked really well put together. You know, he had a clean haircut. And him and Drew and Brian kind of had like a little huddle right before things started. You know, they were sort of like going over their strategy, confident as hell. Now, the other co-defendants, I'm not going to lie, I don't know. I don't think Durk saw me. I was kind of obviously looking at Durk most of the time, trying to see what was going on. He had bigger fish to fry. Okay, he had bigger fish to fry. He was kind of, you know, just in the zone, I would say. However, okay, I'm pretty sure Dee locked eyes with me. And he looked like he's seen a guy. He looked so surprised. And then he sort of nodded to one of, like, a couple of the other co-defendants, almost like, hey, look, look who's in the courtroom. That was kind of surreal. That was crazy. I was just like, what the hell? Dirk was sat in front of them, so it wasn't like they could be like, yo, Dirk, look who's here. But it was like he was sat in front of them, kind of closer. Imagine this is the courtroom, and like all of the audience are here at the bottom near the front doors. It's like Dirk and his team are sort of on one side near the center, and then the co-defendants was kind of behind Dirk here. So they had a better view of like who else was in the back of the courtroom, and Dirk was a lot more in the middle. The prosecutors and the defense were facing each other in a desk in the middle, and then the judge right at the top. That's kind of how it was arranged. But yeah, Didi see me and was just like what? He was taken aback. I'm not gonna lie, and he was kind of like, hey, look. To the other two, it was just like, hey, look who here. That was crazy. I'm not gonna lie to you. But anyway, okay. Basically, Drew. Okay, let me just back up and tell you what was going on. I would say there was definitely a show of confidence, kind of Dirk being confident, laughing, smiling, and being happy. Meanwhile, the prosecutors looked very, very serious. Now, little did I know when I wrote the note saying that they looked serious, little did I know they were about to get chewed out. They were about to get chewed up and spat out. Okay, so the prosecutors looked very serious. Dirk and his team looked very confident, and that is how the courtroom played out. The prosecutors were on the back ropes the whole time, and Dirk's team were very confident. They didn't even need to say much. The judge was kind of, I don't want to say the judge was on their side, because I think he was impartial, but I do feel like the judge really was just kind of like calling out the bullshit of the prosecutors, and the judge did give a little bit of backlash to Dirk's team, but they handled it much better. Now, as this is going on, just as things are about to start, more and more people are coming in. So Dirk's wife, India, came in, okay? She hugged Brian Steele. They had like a very sweet embrace. And Dirk looked so happy to see his wife. Dirk was kind of really staring at India quite a lot. It looked like she actually gave him a lot of energy, very kind of nurturing vibe. She gave him a lot of strength. It felt like she walked in the courtroom and charged him up even more. Like he was looking in his element, to be honest with you. It was very interesting. So basically, my handwriting's terrible here. What did that say? Dirk kind of... Wait. What the fuck's Louis C.K.? Dude looked just like Louis C.K. I'm not trying to hold you. Like, it was so surreal. But basically, like, Dirk had 3 lawyers, okay? All of the co-defendants that were sat behind him, each of them had their own respective individual lawyer. So it was a very big team. And then there were basically just like 3 prosecutors. So it was a big, it was a lot of people in the room, a lot of people at the bench and at the table and things like that. So this was all a hearing for the paperwork that I just showed you at the start of this. It was a motion to sever the Vicar counts, which is the murder of Stefan Mack under the gang conspiracy that happened in Chicago, to separate that from the Lil Pab murder. Now, what is very, very interesting is pretty much from the get-go, the judge was on the prosecutor's ass. The judge was so to the point. I would say the judge, not to put down the judge on the David trial, but the judge in the Dirk case was like so professional, so on point, didn't take any bullshit, got straight to it, was just saying what he felt. This is what it is. This is what it's like. So the judge basically came out, said, I've looked at both petitions, all right, and they basically said he basically said, I'm not going to say it in the legalese because I couldn't quite write down everything he said, but he basically said the law of speedy trial and the Speedy Trial Act, it doesn't dictate his decision. He said it's guidance, but it's up to him. He said he's the judge. What he says goes. That is something he can take into consideration. But the Speedy Trial Act and what Dirk's trying to say, that's not going to influence his decision. Now, when he said that, I was thinking, oh, shit, Dirk's about to have a rough day in court. But then suddenly, everything turned around. He said, if I sever and give a date on both of the different trials... Okay, it was kind of weird. He said if I severed and gave a date on both of the different trials, it wouldn't make sense. So the judge basically said it's silly for Dirk and his team to ask for the whole indictment to be dropped on the basis that they've added all this stuff in at last minute. So at the start, it sounded like the judge was kind of cooking Dirk a little bit and basically saying, look, previously you wanted to sever the defendants, but now you're asking to sever the charges. And he was basically saying, look, a lot of the stuff that didn't fly before, it is different now. He basically said it is different. Like these new charges that have been added, they've been added last minute. It's a Vicar charge. It's a murder. It's basically this big overarching RICO conspiracy. And he said, look, you're asking to sever charges now. You previously asked to sever defendants' cases from each other. And he said, I didn't grant that. He seemed to infer like that's not on the table no more. Separate.
By the way, Vicar is violent crimes in aid of racketeering.
You guys ain't even on the table. But he basically said, now you're asking for counts to be severed. And he said that he's taken that seriously. So the judge basically said that the government's He basically said that like the severance motion is all under his discretion. It sounded a little bit like he was even suggesting that maybe he felt that like the prosecutors were taking liberties a little bit and you know, being a bit presumptuous, acting like they laying down the law. And he basically is like, it's under my discretion. Doesn't matter what the Speedy Trial Act says. Doesn't matter what you guys point out and say you can't pick and choose, as I said in the previous video, a buffet of charges. He said it is up to him, and he's the one weighing up the factors for justice. And he basically kept saying, what's the prejudice? You need to think about what's the prejudice, and that's what's going to make a difference in this. And what was really interesting, he said, trying 2 cases instead of 1, what's the problem with that? He called out, this is when it really started to turn around in Durk's favor. He called out the prosecutors, and he basically said to them, you know, you guys are saying it's going to be so harsh for the jury to have a severed trial, and we're going to have 2 whole juries impaneled, and we're going to waste all this time and court resources. And he smoked them, to be honest. He said, what's so bad about having 2 different cases instead of 1? He said, it's prosecutor's job. It's your job to try cases. He didn't say this, but he basically, it was inferring like, don't be lazy. So what? He's not dismissing the charges. He basically was like, look, dismissing the charges ain't really up for debate right now. But he's like, what is wrong with severing this? If you adding this in so last minute, it's not really fair. So you basically are hired to be a prosecutor and try cases. You're going to have to try 2 cases. They said it's prosecutor's job to try cases. It's the cops and the investigators' job to come to trials and testify. And he said that he completely disagreed with prosecutors, that it would be a waste of resources because it's their job, it's the investigator's job to testify, and it's the jury's job to come and be impartial and break down these trials. And he basically said that the first severed trial would be simple. It's the LA murder. He said we need to keep it simple. You can't have all this complicated shit confusing the juries, taking things out of context, adding these extra Chicago murders that happened before the LA trial. You're putting a Chicago murder on Durk that happened at the start of 2022. You're putting that superseding the murder that happened in August of 2022. It's a previous thing, and really it was all about the LA murder to begin with. So he's basically saying the first trial for the LA murder would have been simple. It should have been simple. And he said that this is really, really interesting, to be honest with you. Even though it was a W for Durk, there were some stuff that made me think, oh, he's not uncooked. Because the judge basically, whenever the judge mentioned the LA murder, and this really, really shocked me, he basically said, and I wrote this down verbatim, when he mentioned this, he said the LA murder, but every time he said it, he would mention something very negative. He would say, the LA murder, this was a terrible threat to the peace and the streets of LA, right? So he said that every time he brought it, he didn't just say the LA murder, he would say this LA murder, which was a horrendous act, a terrible threat to the streets of LA. He said this was, he described...
Well, obviously, it was definitely a heinous act, but the judge is not going to be determining if he's guilty or not. That's the jury.
The murder of Savia Robinson, Lil Pab, he said he didn't just say the murder, he said this disgusting and despicable murder. So when you're hearing that, you're thinking, okay, Durk's taking a W, but at the same time, don't get it twisted. This judge is a tough cookie, and he ain't a Durk fan. He just laying down the law as he sees it, and today was not the prosecutor's day. But if it gets to that trial, and that evidence starts looking bad for Durk, he's going to be up against a really, really tough judge. Literally, he's like, this murder, which, by the way, was disgusting and despicable. Those are his exact words. That kind of blew my mind. I was thinking, surely he's not allowed to say, how do we know? Isn't it to the jury to decide it was disgusting and despicable? But apparently not. It's on the judge can say this was disgusting and despicable, heinous crime. You know, it threatened the safety of the streets of LA. And I'd always try and remind people that's what this is about. It's not about, oh, trying to score points on Durk. I don't like Durk. For the jury to kind of understand understand the LA murder, understand the attempts to flee. It really should just be self-contained, and the jurors should just consider those things. He said that there's simplicity in the severance, and he basically kind of went on to say, well, really, you're all arguing about what you deserve, what Durk wants, speedy trial, what the prosecutors want. And he said what really matters is what Lil Pab's mother would actually want. And he said that he hadn't heard from her yet. And he said it's not fair to delay her justice so that the state can throw on this huge vicar extra murder charge. And the judge said at the end of the day, it's all up to him. He's going to take into account Lil Pab's family and what they want to do, not what the prosecutors want to do. The prosecutors want to add this murder on last minute and tack it on and make the whole situation look way worse for Durk and then rush it to the August trial. And it sounded like he wasn't going for it. He wasn't feeling it. Now, while this is all going on, I kind of turned around and then I realized, oh shit, Big Durk's in here. So Durk's father and Durk's mother actually came in a little bit late, but they still came into the courtroom, came and sat in the back. And you know, Big Durk definitely had a little aura to him as well. Not quite Brian Steele level, but he was cool. And I snapped a little sneaky pic of Brian Steele and Durk having a chat afterwards. But basically, the judge kind of went on to say, look, this isn't an issue with the Speedy Trial Act. He kept bringing that up. He's saying it's not about the act. He didn't say this, but it was like, fuck the act. I decide what goes. If I want to listen to that, cool. If I think that something else is going on, we're going to do it my way. He said that the government should basically agree that they did the superseding indictment. Basically, he made a really good example. He said, look, the government surely would agree if you did your third superseding indictment, adding this extra murder on August the 19th, the day before the August the 20th trial was set. He said nobody would allow it to go ahead a day later. He said, if you drop this murder on Durk on the day before trial and expected him to still go ahead with this trial with a whole extra murder added with 1 day to look into it, he said it's absurd. It's just, it would never fly. Absolutely nobody in their right mind would allow that to happen. And the judge is basically saying, he basically asked, you know, if the superseding indictment, if that third indictment was put forward at such a late date, he basically said it completely would upend the defendant's plans. And he didn't say, oh yeah, you know, I'm going to force you to drop those charges, but he did lean heavily towards severing it. He said, look, if there's 2 trials, and again, he said, if there's 2 trials, the despicable LA murder has to be intertwined with the Vicar charge of Stefan Mack. He kept saying that, the despicable. To be honest, he didn't really say the Chicago murder was despicable. He probably hasn't had time to look into it. But he kept saying this despicable LA murder. It caught me off guard, to be honest with you. It was despicable. I couldn't believe it. And basically, like, he kind of was asking the prosecutors and going back and forth. Sorry, I'm getting a dry throat.
I think we got the gist of this. Yeah, so the judge is basically agreeing with Durk. And I think that's a right thing to do. If you can't push this trial back for at least, I want to say 3 to 6 months, to have a defendant having to fight these violent crimes in aid of racketeering charges is just ludicrous. This is like a whole nother murder. Also, what Durk's team did say, which I haven't heard Traplord say, but I'll mention, Durk's team has said, hey, listen, They've now added this onto this indictment. We are questioning the validity of this even being part of the indictment. The 2 guys who pled guilty, are they making statements? No one ever pointed out that Durk is the actual person that was supposed to pay the money. And there's no even follow through on, did they get paid? Yes, they were in a music video, but how do you just like throw that on Durk? So that was a good point, and I think that judge is actually being fair. I would imagine that as we get closer to trial, the amount of motions that Durk will be submitting, and this would actually determine a lot of trials, y'all. Especially in the YNWMLE trial, that's what a lot of people thought that was missing, and that's why they think his new trial, he's going to have a better chance. You got to make sure the prosecutors got nothing to work with. You got to do motions after motions. Let's suppress some evidence. Oh, that shouldn't count. Nope, you can't bring that up. Hey, if you mention that you set the rules of engagement. You don't just go into the game. Like, the game is trial. You file every motion possible to try to get everything that they're going to use against you tossed out, or at least reduced, or the scope of how it gets delivered to the jury. It should be done in a way that is the most favorable to you, that you have the best chance of beating the case. So that's what it is, right? Okay, good. At least decent news for Durk. I did see Durk's father said something. Let's actually play what he had to say, and then we'll move on. We're going to go into this Nolan Ryan's thing. But this is what Big Durk said.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Alhamdulillah. I just left the courthouse for the hearing with my son today. It went well. Alhamdulillah. Everything went well. The judge favored us and ruled in our favor today and granted our motion. Alhamdulillah, man. The prosecutor tried to bring them bogus charges, but the judge severed those charges, and we're ready for trial now. So we thank everybody for their support, their prayers, everything that they've poured out to us right here, family, friends, and fans. So continue to pray for us. Continue to keep us in your dua. Alhamdulillah. Assalamu alaikum.
There we go. There we go. All right. Let's get an update on what's going on with this Nolan Wells story. That story is